Hey everyone, and a super energetic welcome back to LexTalk, exploring English and linguistics in Thailand.
It's great to be back.
We're so thrilled to have you join us for Season 5, Episode 2. Today, we're embarking on a real deep dive
Yeah, a really important one.
into something incredibly important for so many involved in English language education here in Thailand.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the significant hurdles faced when teaching English in rural areas.
It's a topic that affects, well, millions.
Exactly. We've gathered a lot of information, our own notes, research articles, to really understand what's happening and, why it matters so much.
We're planning to look at it from a few different angles.
Yeah, everything from the challenges of finding qualified teachers, the scarcity of resources.
To things like curriculum design and even socioeconomic factors.
Right. Our goal isn't just to list the challenges, but also to maybe shed some light on potential ways forward.
Definitely. Explore solutions too.
So whether you're an educator out there on the ground, a concerned parent, or maybe you're just fascinated by English language learning in Thailand.
This deep dive is for you.
It is. It's for our LexTalk community.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So kicking things off, it's really striking when you look at the sources just how widespread this issue is. The lack of specifically trained English teachers in rural schools. You often have incredibly dedicated teachers doing their absolute best, but maybe their main training is in maths or science,
Right. And their expertise in English language teaching, or ELT, might be limited.
Exactly. And ELT, just to clarify, that's all about the specialized methods, the techniques for teaching English effectively. It's a specific skill set.
It absolutely is. And it goes beyond just not having that ELT specialization, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our research highlights this really common scenario where one teacher in a rural school might be responsible for multiple subjects.
Oh, definitely.
And sometimes teaching English across like 4 or 5 different grade levels.
Imagine that workload.
Just think about that. Being the single English teacher for that many students at different stages.
It makes it incredibly challenging to give that focused instruction each group really needs.
Yeah, things like, differentiating the lessons or giving personalized feedback, it becomes almost impossible.
Which we know are so crucial for language development.
Totally.
And if you connect that to professional development, you see a big gap. Access to those really valuable programs like CELTA, that's the Certificate in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, a big one for practical skills.
Right, or TEFL.
Or TFL certs, yeah. Or even just ongoing continuous professional development, CPD. It's often much harder for rural teachers to access those.
Compared to city teachers, you mean?
Exactly. Compared to their urban counterparts. And the reasons are varied, right? Cost, travel time and expense, maybe even just lack of awareness or school support to go for it.
It really paints a picture of an uneven playing field, resource-wise. And speaking of resources, that's another huge area we looked into. It's not just about the teachers themselves.
No, it's also the tools they have, or rather, don't have.
Right, the infrastructure. Our sources really detail the very real difficulties with unreliable internet.
Oh, yeah. Spotty connectivity is a major issue.
And limited access to even basic technology in so many rural schools.
And think about the contrast that creates.
How so?
Well, you might have urban schools using all sorts of digital tools, maybe even AI-powered ESL apps.
Cutting-edge stuff.
While for many rural students, the reality is still, the blackboard drill, repeating patterns written on the board.
Which has its place, maybe, but...
But it lacks that dynamic interaction, doesn't it? That real-world practice you get from more communicative stuff.
True. And then there's the issue of just outdated textbooks sometimes.
Yeah, old materials and a shortage of basics like language labs for listening and speaking practice.
Right. And that lack of resources, it goes beyond just the physical tools, too. It's about the opportunity for students to just be exposed to real, authentic English.
You mean outside of the lesson itself?
Exactly. Like regular access to English videos or podcasts, maybe even this one.
Hopefully.
Or just casual chats with native speakers. That can be really scarce in a rural setting.
Yeah, and that lack of exposure outside the classroom, that's a big hurdle for developing actual communication skills, real-world competence.
It really is.
Which brings up a related point, doesn't it? The environment beyond the school gates.
You mean at home, in the community?
Precisely. If English isn't spoken at home, or you don't hear it much around town,
then the classroom is basically the only place they encounter it.
Often, yes. It becomes this isolated space for English, and without chances to practice or apply it in real life.
Their progress can stall.
It can impact progress, yeah, and also their motivation. if you don't see English being used by people you know or see how it connects to your future.
It's harder to see the point. It feels abstract.
Exactly. Why put in the effort if it seems irrelevant to your daily life?
Makes total sense. Our notes mentioned a potentially interesting idea to tackle that.
Oh, yeah.
Exploring ways to maybe pair up rural students with kids in urban areas.
Like pen pals or online.
Yeah, pen pal or facilitated online connections, maybe with English-speaking partners, just to give them more real communication practice.
That could provide some valuable, authentic interaction, increase that exposure.
Definitely worth exploring.
And what's fascinating is how these environmental things, the lack of exposure, then kind of bump up against the curriculum itself.
How the lessons are actually designed.
Yeah, and delivered. Our sources suggest that things like national exams, standardized textbooks, they might not always really reflect the specific context of rural students.
Their lives, their experiences.
Exactly. There can be this sort of unintentional urban bias baked in, assumptions about what kids know or are familiar with.
I can see that. Like maybe a listening test with a dialogue set in a busy subway station.
Perfect example.
For a kid growing up in a village where they've never even seen a subway.
It feels completely alien, right? Distant. Not applicable to their world at all.
Yeah, like the learning is happening over here and their life is over there, totally separate.
And if we think about the bigger frameworks, like the CEFR, the Common European Framework for Languages.
The proficiency levels, A1, B2, etc.
Right. The curriculum might focus heavily on hitting those basic levels, which is important, of course.
Sure, foundations first.
But sometimes that focus on basic skills might accidentally sideline the development of actual fluency. Practical communication.
The ability to just use the language in a real situation.
Exactly. Which is arguably what's most vital for long-term use and benefit.
It really is all tangled together, isn't it?
It is.
And then you layer on top of that the really significant socioeconomic barriers, family expectations.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. Our research points out how economic pressures can really shape a student's education path in rural areas.
Like needing kids to help out.
Exactly. There might be a very real expectation, especially for older students, to chip in with the family income, working on the farm, helping in a local shop.
And that means missing school sometimes.
It can lead to inconsistent attendance, yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes higher dropout rates in rural areas compared to urban ones.
That's tough.
And from the family's perspective, especially if money is tight, maybe investing time and effort in English seems, well, less important.
Or just unrealistic compared to skills needed right now for local work.
Precisely. It might be seen as a luxury or something not really needed for the reality of their lives.
Which is a really critical perspective to understand, not just dismiss.
Absolutely.
One potential approach our notes mentioned was about making the English learning itself more relevant.
How so?
Like intentionally teaching vocabulary and using topics directly connected to rural life.
So English for agriculture, maybe? Or for tourism, if that's big locally.
Exactly. Show that practical link. It could seriously boost motivation for the students.
And help families see the value, too. See how it can fit into their context.
Right. Make it relatable.
Making it relatable and applicable, that's absolutely key for engagement, isn't it?
Totally. And, okay, finally, we really need to talk about the teachers themselves again. The ones working in these rural settings.
The challenges they face personally and professionally.
Yeah. Our sources consistently bring up teacher burnout, feelings of isolation.
It makes sense. They often lack that easy peer support network.
Right, that collegial connection you might find in a bigger city school.
And the opportunities for professional growth, workshops, conferences, they can be harder to come by.
It sounds like it could be a really isolating experience.
It can be. And that lack of support, fewer chances to grow. It can understandably lead to feeling overwhelmed, maybe demotivated.
Plus, there's often just not enough recognition, is there, for the incredibly hard work these teachers are doing.
Often with fewer resources and bigger obstacles than their urban colleagues, it's a tough gig.
It really is.
But, even small steps can help combat that isolation.
Like what?
Well, our notes had a practical tip. Encouraging teachers to actively join national ELT networks.
Oh, like Thytosol? Or CMEO?
Exactly. Or even just getting involved in online teacher communities, Facebook groups, forums.
Just to connect with other educators.
Yeah. Share resources, swap strategies, get that peer support. Just knowing you're not alone can make a huge difference.
That's a great practical suggestion. So as we sort of wrap up this deep dive,
It's clear there's a really complex mix of challenges.
yeah, from the basic need for more qualified teachers and better resources,
To the nuances of limited exposure, curriculum
those
mismatches.
significant socioeconomic hurdles,
Yeah.
and the very real risk of teacher burnout.
Like a lot.
It is. But it's so important we don't just see these as like impossible roadblocks.
No, definitely not.
We should see them as the critical areas where we need focused attention, where innovation and collaboration can really make a difference.
For both the teachers and the students in these rural communities, there's real potential there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Potential for fostering innovation, pushing for more educational equity across the board.
And achieving some really transformative change in rural English education here in Thailand. It's possible.
It really is. And, let's not forget the human element, the incredible impact just one dedicated, motivated teacher can have.
Oh, absolutely. On the lives and futures of so many students in their community, it's profound.
It really underscores that power of connection and commitment right there on the ground.
Hmm. And that leads to a good thought for our listeners, maybe.
Yeah.
What are some practical ways that we, as a wider community interested in English education in Thailand, how can we actively support these rural teachers and students, help bridge some of these gaps we've talked about?
That's a vital question for all of us to think about. Definitely food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking ahead, next time, Season 5, Episode 3, we're shifting gears slightly.
Where are we heading?
We'll be looking at higher education, diving into English in Thai universities, the challenges and the innovations happening there.
Ah, interesting. Another important part of the picture.
It is. So
Mhm.
please do make sure you tune in for that. It should be really insightful.
This one's great.
And of course, a quick but super important reminder for everyone listening.
Go on.
Please don't forget to follow LexTalk. We're on all the platforms. Our website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify.
Easy to find.
Yep. Just search for LexTalk Podcast. Our handle is usually at
Well-
LexTalk Podcast. And let's really try as a community to think about connecting rural and urban classrooms.
That's a great shared goal, bridging those divides.
It is. It's something we can all work towards.
It's really through this kind of collective effort, this shared passion, that we'll see real progress.
Couldn't agree more.
Positive change is possible.
Let's talk. Let's learn. Let's LexTalk.
Let's Lex talk.